All right, welcome everybody. We had about 150 people confirmed. I don't think it's 150 people in the room, but let's say close to 100. So I'm going to introduce you to our 4 awesome panelists in one sec. Just want to get a bit of an idea of who all you guys are. So who's been to a Net Tuesday event before? And newbies? Oh, so good mix. Good mix. Okay, well, as Eli said, this is something we do once a month, so hopefully you new people like us and you come back. But we probably won't physically be here next time. Find us on meetup.com Net Tuesday, and you can keep up to date with all the stuff. So this is my first time hosting a panel, so my idea was get 4 people that have lots to talk about, and then I don't have to really do anything at all. So let's go right to left. Who are you? Where are you from?
Jason Toll, interaction designer at Simon Fraser University.
And who's this beside you?
I'm Vanessa Chase. I'm a writer and a nonprofit consultant.
I'm Andrew Nguyen from Lemongrass Films.
And I'm Phillip Djwa, I'm the principal at Agentic Communications.
Who here has seen one of these guys before? Already famous. Okay, so the hashtag for tonight for you live tweety people is NTVan. We're trying to broadcast this live here, and we're recording it later. These people have all given me their slides and links to their videos and all that good stuff. So if you miss something, it'll be up on the website within 24 hours. So don't worry too much if you don't capture all the URL. It will be curated for you along the way. So I'm going to keep it pretty short. I just got a couple quick questions, and you guys can jump into stuff, and then we're going to let you guys kind of run with the floor. So for an organization, why is digital storytelling important? Why is this something that nonprofit organizations should be thinking about?
Well, I think it seems like it's been a really hot topic lately for some reason, but in education, it's constantly about storytelling. So the digital aspect is some part that I'll be talking about because I've been around the road a few blocks. So the digital part is sort of a misnomer for me, but more about mediated communication. But just as a way to deliver your information, it's quick, simple, and people tend to respond pretty well.
I think storytelling is so great for nonprofits, whether it's digital or otherwise, because it's what gives meaning and context to the numbers that you have that go along with the programs and services, and ultimately that's what allows people to really empathize with the work that you're doing.
I guess we're going in line. We're as people, as human beings, we love stories. We love telling stories. We love hearing stories. And adding digital just makes it fancy, but in reality, we've been doing this for generations and generations. So for your organization, absolutely. You've already been doing storytelling. Now we've got the internet. So do the same thing with just new technology, that's all.
But I think there's a real danger though, right? Because stories aren't always the same, right? I think that when we think about stories, a lot of organizations are rushing out and kind of digging up any kind of story they can doing and putting it out there. And sometimes those stories just don't work. In fact, they're terrible. And in fact, they do a disservice. And there was a really interesting report from M&R Research, which is a nonprofit consultancy, and they did a comparison between 2 stories. One was a very institutional telling of a story, like what their aims and objectives are and how they're going to do it. And the other was a very personal story told by a boy that was suffering from the disease that the organization was trying to cure. They did a test, 300,000 people each. Which one do you think won? The institutional one, by a 4-time margin in terms of giving donations. So there are some real things to learn about what kind of stories work. And personal stories can be really effective, as I think you said. We're all human, but I think we also have to understand that we have to look at exactly what makes up a good story and what does that really mean, and how do those good stories compel people to actually act.
All right, I got one more question. I'll let you guys share your decks and videos. So for talking about the organization side, I'm wondering more about for the individual who might be the focus of the story. Is there anything the organization should be aware of, or what do you think the impact for the individual might be in having their story told, good or bad? Maybe we'll start at the other end. We'll come back this way.
Oh, that's too bad because I'm not really sure. I think that's a really good question, and I think that what I've seen is that the people at the center of the story that have given their consent, obviously, and all those kinds of things, can sometimes feel a real liberation in getting the story out there. There's a lot of stories about how people have been able to throw away a lot of stigma and come out and be able to say what their story has been. And that's tremendously liberating.
What was the question again?
Impact on the individual that may be the subject of the story.
Like Phillip said, it can be very empowering for a person to open up with their story. In some of the people that I've worked with, telling a story can actually be a very traumatic experience as well. I've interviewed abuse victims, women who have been through horrific experiences with a partner, people who are dealing with mental illness, and sometimes retelling that story can be reliving that trauma. So I found that, yes, it can be very empowering, but you've got to be careful of those that you're asking to retell their story, because it can be deeply painful as well.
Yeah, I would second that. I think there's a lot of ethical issues that go along with storytelling, especially when you're dealing with really vulnerable populations or causes where there's a lot of stigma around the people involved, or misinterpreted facts, what have you. But I think the most important thing you can do is to really allow the story to be told authentically. So if you're interviewing somebody and then repurposing that story in collateral, to then give that final piece back to the person whose story you're using to make sure that they're okay with the context in which it's being shared, and really make them feel empowered, like they do have a voice and a say in how it's being used, and that they're not just being exploited for the purposes of fundraising or community engagement.
Yeah, I concur with the sensitivity issue as well in graphic facilitation and a lot of workshops that I've been involved with. The facilitator often asks the participants to tell their story and tell your life story. I had that as an assignment last week in 16 panels. And it does take a bit of effort and a bit of energy, and it can be emotional. But when you do get to tell someone else's story and they are not as digitally savvy or internet friendly as probably most of us in this room are, it is quite amazing to see the look on their face when you have put their story out there. And it is a bit of a gift that I think you can give to others when you do that.
Great. Okay, well, I think I'll let these guys share their content they kind of prepared for us. And then hopefully sometime at the end of their show and tell, for you guys to ask some of the questions that you might have around storytelling. Maybe some things the show will kind of trigger some ideas and conversations. Sound good? Mm-hmm. All right. Vanessa, would you like to start us up here? Sure. No, I think I'm the only person here that uses the PC. I'm really cruel and done this today.
Is it distracting to have us up here, or is it okay? Yeah. Seems all right?
Yeah.
Can you go off stage for
Sure, yeah, shoot.
All right.
We'll call you back. You can use the arrows, or you can use the mouse, or the touchpad. If there's another way to do it.
All right, awesome. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm talking about storytelling and email marketing and how to effectively combine the two. But before I kind of delve into that topic, I wanted just to kind of cover some high-level, facts about storytelling and what it is. Because I realize not everybody in the room has a communications background, and you might be wondering, well, where do I start with this? And what is storytelling to begin with? So the big question I have is, why storytelling? What makes it a great tactic compared to others that we can use in communications and fundraising? Does anyone have any thoughts? Jeff?
Why stories as opposed to?
Why stories as opposed to something else that you can use?
Well, it is I think, personally, it depends on the audience. Most of my work has been government funded, which means they typically don't care as much about the stories and more about number of people served, and it's all about the numbers. So storytelling is something that's new to me in my day job, because it's been very much, X amount of clients served, Y employed, Z go back to school, not, here's Bob, sort of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's true. It largely depends on the audience you're talking to. So I guess for the purposes of us talking about storytelling tonight, we'll probably mostly be talking about individual donors rather than larger institutions who might fund you. So one of the great things about storytelling is that it easily allows your audience to empathize with what you're doing. And oftentimes it's hard to connect with a cause or a big organization. You're not an individual, and it's not easy to form a personal relationship with you. But the goal in terms of storytelling is to get people to understand the work that you're doing and to start to look to your nonprofit as a leader in problem solving for whatever cause you're dealing with. So in that sense, storytelling is really about getting people to move from thinking to feeling. So oftentimes, if you're throwing out facts and figures, you start using your logical brain, you start thinking about what those mean or might not mean. But in order to get people to really respond to a call to action in an email, for instance, you need them to feel something, and you need them to empathize with some aspect of your work. If it's a story, for instance, about somebody who has gone through a program. Chad works in Swire, for instance, so somebody who's been able to get a computer and a job, going through that sort of process, for instance. It's difficult, I think, for many nonprofits and many causes because not all of your donors will understand the issues that your clients face. So by telling them stories, you allow them to start empathizing with those basic feelings and human experiences that they can relate to in some other aspect of their life. So in my mind, email marketing is kind of like the perfect platform for storytelling. It really is a great opportunity to be able to drive people to other aspects of your nonprofit's work online, be it video content or blogs or your website. And it's an opportunity to really form connections with people and potentially raise money and things like that. In particular, when we think about email marketing, though, there are kind of two main instances where you can start to use storytelling, and that's in the copies and the visuals. I'll talk mostly about copy tonight because I think visuals will be well covered by the other three panelists. Copy is a great starting point for storytelling in emails because at the end of the day, when somebody is reading through it, the words are what they're going to connect with, and that's what will make them take action to go make a donation or to go watch a video or do some specified action. In addition to looking at copy, though, storytelling can also be thought of conceptually rather than tactically. And by that I mean that the email itself can act as one part of the story arc. So I'll elaborate a little bit on what I mean, because that's kind of abstract. So tactically speaking, you could literally tell a story in the body of an email. And that's fine and it works very well, but you could also parse the story out over several emails, or you could use an email to redirect somebody to the rest of the story, such in another storytelling medium like a landing page, for instance. So in that sense, an email and email marketing is kind of a gateway to a larger digital strategy around storytelling. And I think that's one of my favorite aspects about email marketing is that it can so well encompass a full campaign. If you're doing storytelling across many mediums, like video, for instance, you can use email to help get people connected to that content and drive them there. And I think the beauty of the digital world is that we can really capitalize, as I said, on that multimedia interactive environment to get people plugged into our messaging and mission and community ultimately. So I know that one of the real issues that many nonprofits face is that you have to try to cultivate real and genuine interest in your nonprofit, and you have to go a lot deeper than just talking about programs and services and statistics, those sort of things. You have to talk about the actual people that you're serving or the cause you're serving and the impact that it's having in the community and giving somebody something really tangible to think about in the story and in your work. And that's one of the great things about email is that you can kind of create that experience for somebody in terms of understanding your work by driving them to video, as I said. So having talked about email quite a bit and why it's so great for storytelling and what stories really are, we can start to think about how we can leverage email to get people interested in the stories we have to tell and the larger body of work that we're engaged in. So I think, to me, this is kind of the million-dollar question that a lot of us are asking in terms of donor retention and acquisition. How do we get somebody even interested in what we're doing in the first place, right? To me, I think that really boils down to the copy of the email, which sounds really simple, but it's really the foundation of email marketing, is the words that you're putting on the page and how somebody is responding to those. So I wanted to kind of illustrate the difference that copy can make in an email. Is there anybody here from Dress for Success Vancouver? No? Really? Yeah. Even better. All right. So I'm going to use one of their emails that I received last year. And we're going to go ahead and have a look at that. And then I kind of rewrote it and reimagined it as a storytelling tool. So we'll go ahead and look at the before email first.
Sorry, and Vanessa, if you could just like project the TV more, so
Yes.
people in the back are
Sorry.
just like, pow it out, pow it out.
All right. Oh, so small.
Okay, hold on. This is where I can actually be helpful.
Excellent.
Here we go. Now I'm way too big, right?
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect.
Is that legible?
Yeah.
If you want to zoom in on anything, you can give it a
Sure.
click. No, you can't.
Oh, no, yeah.
There we go.
Okay, that's fine. Can everybody read that in the back as well? Almost. I will read this because I don't know if it's the greatest quality copy in here. So it says, Dear Vanessa, I'm writing to ask for your help in our work with women who are changing their lives and becoming self-sufficient. You've given to us before, your time, your clothing, maybe even money, so you already believe in us. This letter is about money. At Dress for Success Vancouver, we are thankful for so many wonderful clothing donations and the time and expertise of a large team of volunteers who are tireless in their efforts to help our clients be all that they can be. Our annual budget of nearly $300,000 allows us to boast a healthy employment success rate of 30%, and for the women who participate in the PWG group, I don't know what that acronym is, 75% remain employed after a year of using our services. We now serve over 2,000 women annually with our programs, education, scholarships, clothing, peer support, moral support, and caring. Our primary source of income is to host events such as Impact and the Power Walk. Our events are fantastic and raise awareness and funds, however, they are not enough to be counted as a reliable source of income. In fact, sponsorship for these incomes is being increasingly difficult to secure. This is our plea to have you help us change this. Our goal between now and the new year is to increase the number of monthly donors. If just 10% of our 8,000 supporters, yes you, give $12.50 a month or more, there's no problem if you'd like to give us more. We hope $12.50 a month isn't too painful for you, and that it becomes, and that this, and to us this becomes $10,000 a month in steady income. This means we sleep at night and are better equipped to concentrate on the programs we deliver. Put another way, $12.50 a month equals $150 a year, which equals hope and support for one woman in transition. This woman impacts her community, or her children, her community, and the world. Help women. So this was the initial email that I received. Anybody have any initial reactions? It's long, right? It's a long list of things, like all the programs they list off, the numbers, acronyms I don't understand. It was very confusing and very, I think what a lot of nonprofits, yeah, exactly, it's not entirely engaging, right? So I think though, the other great part about this example is that I think it kind of illustrates a classic nonprofit paradox, that it says a lot without really saying anything substantial. You know, it could explain the picture at the top, it could give meaning to the facts and the figures of the story. You know, it could do a lot of things before it dives into this kind of convoluted ask for monthly giving, right? So, in a slightly more better world, this email could look like this. Is it down here?
Let's try this. Is the last one? There we go.
Excellent. All right. So, Exhibit A revised. So here we go. Dear Vanessa, I'm always amazed by the conversations I have with Dress for Success's clients. Just last week, I had the opportunity to catch up with Jane, a participant of the professional women's group who re-entered the workplace recently. It was a joy to hear about her success, but one thing she said really resonated with me. This journey of re-entering the workforce has showed me that success, even at an individual level, is a team effort. I could not have gone through this process on my own, and I'm proud to share my success with the countless other women who have helped me along the way. Wow, Jane is so right. Success is often a group effort. In fact, I know from my years as Executive Director of Dress for Success Vancouver that we could not support these women without your help. You're a vital part of Jane's success and the success of the 2,000 women we served last year. I invite you to read more about Jane's story and see the important role you play in women's lives in our community, which is what it says at the bottom. Anyways. As we talked about with email marketing, I kind of looked at a monthly giving campaign as obviously a larger strategy for fundraising. So you don't necessarily have to make an ask in the email, but you can parse out how you strategize around getting people to convert to monthly donors. So in thinking about how I would potentially restructure an email like the first one, chunking it down into the fact that they are focusing on how they're changing women's lives. So you can look at one individual's life. And then if you've given somebody just enough to think about, oh, well, this is a really interesting story, like it sounds like she's doing great things, you can continue to give them opportunities to engage with that story, i.e. through the website potentially if there's a video or some sort of conversation. The other thing that I think makes this email substantially different than the other one is that it's written in a much more personal and intimate way than the first one. So it sounds like the executive director, hypothetically, has taken time to personally write to one individual and really engage them in a conversation. And the story as well, I think, speaks kind of to the heart of Dress for Success's work. Does anyone have any questions about it? Or?
The word I is used a lot as opposed to we. Before it was we and acronyms and percentages, whereas I and a person. So yeah, it does feel more conversational in tone as opposed to markety blast in tone.
Yes, yeah, I think that's often an issue in copy with nonprofits, is that there becomes this distinction between us and you and them and all these different words that in fact, there are individual people obviously working in a nonprofit. A nonprofit isn't this sort of like amalgamation and corporation. There are people there who work day in and day out who deeply care about the issue, and their voices aren't often heard in the collateral, right? So it's really interesting to bring those voices in as a mechanism for storytelling and start to engage them a little bit more and to give voice to all of the people who work there and make the mission happen.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm just curious if you've done any testing with this. I just wonder, when you're going from email to your website, like how many people you're losing, and if you don't have a call to action sort of rate as part of this.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. I probably should have said a disclaimer. I don't actually work for Dress Success.
Oh, okay.
Success.
Yeah, well, sorry.
I use this as an example.
Oh, okay.
But you're right. I think, and that's another good point about email marketing, is that you can measure all those things through Google Analytics and through the service provider that you use. So you have the opportunity to check either with A/B testing, or you can just do a one-off and test batches over time in different segments.
A quick asterisk to that, or footnote. I think it was our November event where we had Brady Josephson speak, specifically about A/B testing for that. So the notes are up there. He did a little bit around, maybe not the call to action in the email, but an organizational sort of email to more of a storytelling one. And he disclaimed that, these aren't statistically relevant and then large sample group, blah, 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 blah. But his open rate percentage was like 10% higher, or like his click-through, sorry. So the personal story from his testing, from doing it from kind of the consulting side, did find that a story-based one had that much more engagement in people going through compared to the organizational lead percentage sort of base thing. With the test that he did with his nonprofit, with the sample size of 100, whatever, blah, 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 blah. That was what he found.
Great.
No problem.
I have one question.
Yes.
In your opinion, would you not have the ask in the initial email? What are the benefits or disadvantages of that?
I mean, you can do it in a variety of ways. I mean, I think having asks in emails is great. It's very effective, and you can certainly convert people that way. If you're doing this as a part of a larger multi-month campaign, it's worthwhile considering different mechanisms for converting people. So maybe you send out an email like this, and then you send people to a landing page that has Jane's story at the top and then has an ask to become a monthly donor at the bottom. I think there's some good benefits to that because you automatically drive people to the website who are probably better prospects to become monthly donors because they're interested in Jane's story. And those are probably your best donors anyways. And then you have the opportunity to do follow-up emails or direct mail, any other sort of fundraising tactic thereafter to kind of continue momentum with the campaign. Yeah.
Last question, then we got to keep going here.
I didn't follow the details of the previous email, so my question is Jane a real person?
No, she's not.
But in theory, you probably would use an actual person,
yes.
right?
Yeah, sorry, I should have explained that better. So in the last email, the first one anyways, they talk about the professional women's group. They mention it briefly and like the success rate with it. So I hypothetically made up somebody that if I was working for Dress for Success, I probably would have interviewed somebody and then created this email. So onwards to the last slide. So I will leave you with a few final tips on copywriting to help you with your storytelling in email. The first is to define a goal from the start. I found from my years of writing, it's much easier to write and tell stories if you know what the end goal of your project is, if it's fundraising, if it's awareness. You can tell better stories and you can better identify them in the process as well. We am part of a story that is captivating enough to keep people wanting more. So, you know, classic advertising, they give you just enough and then they take it away and make you come their direction instead. So if you can use aspects of the story that are most captivating or emotionally charged, you can start to get people more interested in it and then continue to engage them with the story throughout your website or digital collateral. The third tip I have for you is to find out what your audience wants to hear and then feed that back to them. This is, I think, one of the most powerful things you could do is listen to your donors in the community and how they talk about your cause, because how they talk about it might be different than how you talk about it. And the more that you can tap into their psychology and their worldview, the better you can connect with them through copy, which is so valuable. Consider packaging content so that it's really shareable. So, you know, using a click-to-tweet function in emails so that people can share part of the story really easily, and keeping things short and sweet is great. And then finally, invite the reader to become part of the story and really interact with it. So, you know, I've seen a few websites, and I'm sure I'll put one up here.
These guys will fill that, no problem.
I know, yeah. So that have a function where you can share your story about the cause. So if you've worked with the organization or know something better or have a connection to it, you can type in your story in a box and it becomes like this living mural of stories of people in the community, which is, I think, really amazing. And it, again, kind of deepens that connection to your community and potentially donors to the organization. So yeah, I think it's really important to kind of look at your organizational story and how people can start to become a part of that. That's all right.
Vanessa, thanks so much. And Vanessa, if people wanted to find you, do you have a website somewhere?
I do, philanthropyforall.ca.
This is the wrong window here. So this guy here, Jason, not only does he take great fashion advice from me here, just a little bit awkward. Do you?
That's what you brought me here to talk about, though, right?
Yeah. How to dress for success, all right?
Yeah.
Do you need a web browser here? Is this your page here?
That's it.
This is you?
Yes.
All right, Jason, I'll leave it in your capable hand. You take the mouse if the
I'll just be
doesn't
coming
go
back
too
here
far.
occasionally. I didn't put together a big fancy presentation, even though I'm a visual person, a visual designer. This is my blog post for today's presentation. So you can feel free, please, to take out your mobile phones, browse the post, and put all my links and references in there so you can sort of create your own visual guide as we go along here.
Just blew it up a little bit for you.
Thanks, perfect. Okay, so I also brought a couple of props with me to frame out what the topic is of my talk tonight. Hopefully I will get to do the full thing. The times that I've been doing it, I haven't made it to the pencil part. I'll definitely get done with the tape part. So everybody knows about audio cassette tapes. Yeah? We're not going to be making a mixtape, although that would be one of the things that I would have been very active in doing when I was a kid. But I do use audio a lot, and I'm increasingly interested in using audio as an educational tool, and also obviously because that's why I'm here, is to tell digital stories. So I have a quick story about my collection of audio cassettes, why they're so important to me. I still have a box of these that I've saved from my childhood, and it's not the music ones that have turned out to be the most interesting. It is a series of tapes that my grandfather and my mother exchanged over the years as I was growing up. So I am still able to play these tapes, and I do occasionally. The stories, though, they're audio letters, so it's basically letters back and forth. We were living on the West Coast. My grandfather was on the East Coast. And I'm not going to say how old they are, but they're older. They're as old as I am. Okay. So these. Oh, also there's a contest. at the end of the evening, even though I may not get to the pencil portion of the presentation, these two objects have a specific relationship, a special, non-obvious relationship. And for the first 5 people that I talk to that can tell me about that, you will win the prize. So keep that in mind. So I think we're really talking a lot about messages in bottles here. I found just the first image that I could come up with on the Google search. Digital storytelling, the digital part for me is really just the bottle. So whether it's this or whether it's this is the thing in which the message is received, the storytelling device. A lot of the stuff that I have to share with you is about the bottles. I'm hoping to throw in a few tips about the messages. I think Vanessa covered some of those things really, really nicely, but I'm a bit more leaning towards the bottle side. No pun intended. Okay, so I have taken, I do have this collection of tapes, and I have digitized them, of course, because I'm technically savvy enough to do so. And the question is now, what do I do with a collection of audio tapes that have been digitized? Well, I take Digital Storytelling 106, DS 106, wearing the colors here. Chad's a proud alumni of the course. And that's what it is. It's a course on digital storytelling.
Where is this course?
Thanks for asking, Chad. This is an open online course. It is free and open to all to participate. And I do highly encourage everybody to check out the website. To get the link up there. ds106.us. They have an amazing collection. I mean, it was originally conceived or reconceived computing science course. Computing scientists need to tell stories as well. And the instructor sort of took a new take on it when they wanted to put it online. They basically pulled out all the stops as far as the internet medium goes. And this course is served up entirely using social media. So you have your blog is the main piece that you need to join the class, to do the assignments, and to submit the assignments. Because it's open, it does run. It's actually just finishing its semester right now. It's from the University of Maryland, Washington. And you can follow along with the weekly assignments. The teachers are there interacting, but you can actually join anytime and do any of the assignments in any order that you want. And I'm going to tell you about some of those assignments now. This is, by the way, typical of a DS-106 assignment. Mashup is at the core of the culture of DS-106. And Make Art, Damn It is our flag, our slogan. This is from Julia Forsyth. Julia Forsyth, one of the amazing visual designers on DS-106. And here is, oops. So here's a typical, oh, that's a little bit dark. That's Indiana Jones trying to save himself from a, So one of the things DS-106 has done has taken medium like the animated GIF, which in the early days of the web was the home of under construction banners and odd little quirky, I don't know, what's another example of a
GeoCities pages.
GeoCities pages. There you go. So it's taken this kind of low fidelity medium and made it an assignment. This was my first assignment for DS-106. I did a series of these, and actually when I started, I thought it was going to be just a bunch of animated GIFs. And I was actually really looking forward to doing a bunch of them because they're a little bit complicated. It takes you a little bit of time to figure out what tool you're going to use, how to digitize your media. So just going through the steps of technically learning how to do it and then coming up with crazy things to do, I found pretty interesting. Another part of the culture of DS-106 is the daily assignments. So they have this this assignment site that they set up specifically for DS-106 called the Daily Create. They're a series of short 5 to 10 minute assignments, each of them in one of the media, audio, video, or image, or design, or text. And they're quick things you can do, again, almost any time, but it has a specific tag. When you complete the assignment, you post it on your blog, you tag it, and it all comes together, and you can browse on the website through all the various samples from this project or that project. We have a radio station. I was going to try to get into DS-106 radio. We use radio as a format to submit assignments and tell stories.
Assuming my phone hasn't died, that's what's sitting on the
edge. You
edge.
might be on DS-106 radio right now. I might be receiving tweets from the class and the instructor saying that I've horribly mixed up the facts and have misrepresented the class, which is probably the case. But we do have a radio station, and I explore using radio, internet radio, as a way to tell stories. I guess we don't really need to go into too much of the assignments, but if you go to that link, the audio assignments link, you will find a huge selection of quick and easy, well, some are quick and easy, some are a bit more complicated and time-consuming, but again, it's a way to sort of exercise your storytelling skills. They're very low threshold, and a lot of them are really fun. And because it's online in sort of social media world, you do get feedback and you get responses from your art. So the main tool that we use for this is SoundCloud for sharing audio. It's a wonderful website. Just out of curiosity, who listens to most of their music on SoundCloud these days? A few people? I'm up to almost 50% of my time listening to only SoundCloud because there's such a wide variety of stuff put out there. We're not wired for sound, are we?
We are. It might be deafening loud. So
I might actually play some of these as well.
Yeah, you have another 5 minutes. You want to give a couple of spin?
Okay, I'll try. In 5 minutes?
You're like 5 minutes until you turn back into a pumpkin.
Let's see if this works. It's not essential to the whole. It's not essential.
Is there a volume controller in SoundCloud here, or is this just my audio?
No, it's your audio. That's okay. I wasn't really going to play them anyways because I've got a lot of other stuff. I still have to get to the pencil part. But this was a digitized, this is one of the cassette tapes. This is a story from my mom's perspective, from our perspective. It's me talking about my first day of kindergarten. My mom was very smart when she recorded these as well. She would take the recorder to our rooms outside, take it to the place where we were doing stuff, and she'd just turn it on and let us babble away and grab little 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there. My grandfather's tapes, on the other hand, not the best way to go. So his technique was to take the tape recorder, probably a glass of wine at the end of the day, sit down in his comfortable lazy boy, prop his bag up, put the record on, and then just start talking. And he would talk straight for an hour. And then, because it's getting late, as the recording went on, he'd become more slurred, and he'd be falling asleep. I think he may have even fallen asleep in one of the tapes. So that's my first takeaway. Tips for content, tips for the message. Short and sweet is always better, especially with audio. One of the drawbacks I might add is that it takes time to both edit and produce your audio. If you start getting into radio or podcasts, for crying out loud, are very time consuming because it takes so long for you to listen to this stuff. SoundCloud has a sweet app, though. You can just record directly onto your phone, and it can be uploaded instantly. So you can make that connection to your website and put audio content on your website very, very easily. Field reports, interviews. Around around town is actually some of the more compelling stuff. And I think everyone on the DS-106 radio will agree, and hopefully I'm going to get some tweets about that shortly. This was another example, an audio postcard. So this is almost one of the lowest tech uses of audio that I've received, but it was quite literally an MP3 that a friend of mine recorded, MP4 actually, and emailed it to me. There's no fancy SoundCloud, there was no app, but the format of the content, and you can check this out later when you have a chance. She's driving on a road trip, listening to the radio, has a thought. It was about, she was thinking about me, which was sweet enough as it is. And so she just picked up her phone, recorded herself talking in the background audio, and emailed it to me. No production, no script. And it was, like I say, it was one of the most sort of poignant audio stories that I've received. So just to go back into education a little bit, there are uses for audio in the classroom. No fancy visuals here. That's just a shot of the SFU campus back in the 60s when it was being first born. But an instructor in history class came to us with the wish to share narratives, share stories that her students would be creating about art pieces situated around the campus. So now this gets into the super high-tech stuff, augmented reality. Does everybody, you guys know what I mean with augmented reality, right?
No.
So it's the basic idea that now that we have phones, we can turn on an application. In this case, we used LAR, which is, it has some good pricing for educational uses, but typically it's a paid service. And that when I'm walking around the city, I should have had this app fired up. I will show people afterwards. But I'm walking around the city looking through the viewfinder of my camera. I will see, like on Google Maps, little points, little dots of information. And that is the augmentation of our reality. Somebody has, through GPS coordinates, I'm standing in this location, Google knows where my phone is right now. I record a piece of audio. I leave that there in virtual reality, and the next person that comes along with the app will be able to listen to my words. The website, the project worked out very well. There was a lot of technical things we had to overcome to make this happen. The blog was, again, the core infrastructure to make it happen, because all we did was have the students post their content, which was a map, an audio story, and the text, to a blog post. And then when we went to add the point in LAR, we just pointed them to the link. And so I don't really want to get into demoing it because you'll just get a total downward spiral of demo hell. But it is a very interesting experience to be walking along with your earphones on, and it's becoming more popular now. I found another great tool called Djwa, which seems to be targeting the audio field trip. So it's been used for a long time in museums. You get the headphones and you walk around and you get a description of what it is that you're looking at. So I think I could not get Djwa to work. It seems to be a bit fresh still, but the basic idea is you could record a field trip for tourists around a space, around your location, and that would give them it would augment their reality, give them some audio support. 2 minutes, okay, so we're not going to get to the pencil, folks. That's okay. I've got just a couple of quick notes. You're going to have me back for the pencil talk.
There we go. Jason will be in the back.
It out. So I'm just going to reiterate a couple of my notes about the message. Keep it short and sweet. Listening to audio takes time. It takes real time. So you're asking people to spend a minute, 2 minutes, an hour of their life listening to you. So try to keep it concise. Frequency is also a good way. I mean, like with anything, a blog post here and a blog post there is not going to build up the confidence in your audience that you are now publishing blogger. So consistency, regularity is really awesome. And again, this rule goes against the guidelines that we set in our history class, which dictates that you record your audio in a quiet room that's silent, that you can get the perfect quality for your voice. So I'm just going to say, just forget that rule. Go out there in the fields, record your audio on location. You can all do it with your phones. And that's it.
Jesus, thank you very much. Now will be death time for my laptop because someone's going to show video, and if there's no audio, I'm not going to be very popular anymore. But I have faith that it's going to work out. So I think, Andrew, you're going to be Mr. Number 3 here.
Sounds good.
And Andrew, where can people find you if they want to know more outside of headlocking you in the back of the room when you're done talking?
Go to lemongrassfilms.com and you can find out more about me, or if you're on Twitter, Andrew_director.
Do you want slides to start? There you go. No, this is mine. This is actually broadcasting, so they're getting a waffle if you're. No problem. Okay. Let me see if I can get rid of that little volume bar here. I can get it to crash. Oh, hold on, there it was. Yeah, that's a quarter of every time I was told that. Okay, let's hope it finishes crashing the audio bar by the time you're ready to play audio here. Sorry.
I see some Gen Xers in the audience here, and what Gen X childhood experience wouldn't be complete without watching the never-ending story over and over again. But our topic is storytelling. And first of all, I'll introduce myself again. I am from Lemongrass Films, and we basically produce films that move people and influence thinking. So typically, a client will come to me saying, "Hey, Andrew, we have an event coming up. We'd like to produce a story, and we'd like to do an ask for that." So typically a gala event. Or we have a fundraising campaign coming up, and we'd like to produce something to show our funders. So I would say 90% of the time, it's about raising money. And I can sympathize with that. Being in the nonprofit world, it's always finding the next amount of money to fund your program. It's never ending battle. So I would say our style is very documentary-ish. I like dealing with people's stories. We don't make videos that sell widgets or things, but I love telling people's stories. And I think in each and every one of us, there's a really fantastic story that needs to be told in its right time. So, as I said earlier in the panel session here, as human beings, we love stories. We've been telling them since the age of dawn, in front of big fire pits and caves. And, even my 3-year-old daughter, she loves stories, she loves books, always has one in her hand. And when I'm not reading one to her, she'll open it up and start telling the story to her imaginary friends, Buckeye and Husha. And she'll be turning the pages, and she doesn't know what the pages are, but she'll just storytell. She'll tell her imaginary friends stories. So I think it's really in all of us to tell stories. I've been told that a quarter, 25% of our brain is spent processing images. So we actually process images a lot better than we do words or the written text. And so videos make it really effective to reach your audience because not only can they process it better, but it's also entertaining. I think in these days there's so much video out there that it's not a novelty anymore. So while you're educating your audience, you need to be entertaining them as well. And video is really great for that. Video is actually the most shared content on the internet, the most shared content. So if you don't have video content, then you're really missing out on a large audience. I think one of the major benefits of having a well-produced and well-edited video is its predictability. I'll tell you an example. I produced one video for a nonprofit organization, and they were presenting an award to this very famous person. He was actually a rock star. And so I sat down with him. We did this interview of why he's receiving this award. He was a mental health advocate. And so they got the video. They used the video for a large-scale gala. I think in one sitting they raised about $50,000, and they continued to use that video for ongoing purposes. A couple years down the road, they thought, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea to bring the person, this rock star, live to a live audience and have him speak? Because live is better than video, right? And most of us might think so. When he got up to talk, he didn't stop. He kept on talking, and he went on tangents, and he talked about that tangent. People tried to stood beside him on the stage, tried to usher him off, but he kept talking and talking. And then he started swearing, and then he started, it kind of got uncomfortable, I think, for a lot of people. And so that's where I think in one situation, having a good produced video to tell your story is really effective. And not only that, sometimes when you're dealing with vulnerable populations, which we deal a lot with, like people with mental health issues or developmental disabilities, or population groups that you can't pull someone off the street to come to speak at the event, right? Not very easily. So sometimes having those videos in place of them can be really effective to tell that story. So, how do I go to the next slide? Let me start off with a little bit of my story. Our family escaped after the Vietnam War. So the war ended in 1975, and I was it was 79 actually, that our family decided to flee. So my parents, they sold everything that they had and bought gold and used that gold to buy tickets on a ship to escape the country. And so we gave this money to some person, not knowing if they were going to contact us again to tell us where the boat was going to leave and where it was going to be. So we really had to trust them. And we told nobody, not even, my parents didn't tell their parents, my grandparents didn't know that we were about to leave or planning to leave. Because if we got caught at the time, you could be put in a concentration camp, imprisoned, killed, tortured. The options were really horrific. And so we didn't tell anybody. And so in one night in 1979, we got word that the boat's here. We gotta go. So my parents packed up one suitcase each and carried their two children. I was 4 years old at the time. My sister was 2 years old. And having a 3-year-old daughter myself right now, I couldn't imagine doing that. So we went to this little village, waiting at nighttime, waiting for that boat to come. And about 6 a.m. they said, okay, everybody, it's time to go. So we went out to shore. It was dark. No one could see anything. We had fake Chinese passports to get out of the country, because if you had a Vietnamese passport, well, you'd be put back in jail. And so we got there, and I remember my mom's telling me, Andrew, don't talk. Don't say anything. And so we walked up there, showed our passports. They led us onto the boat, and they were these small wooden vessels that fit maybe about 20 people or so. There were dozens of them along the shore, and they all went out to sea quietly. And at the mouth of the river, this boat was waiting for us.
Skyluck.
It's called the Skyluck. About 3,000 refugees crammed into extremely tight quarters. I think there were 3 decks. And just no room, really. Everyone was jammed in to each other. So that's what happened to us. So that boat then began to sail out into the ocean. And the idea was to go to Hong Kong. That was the hope, right? And so, funny story, it was my mom that realized one day as they were sailing that the sun didn't come out the same side of the boat. It should come over the east and set in the west, but the next day, it was the opposite. What's going on? Hong Kong is not that way. And what had happened was the boat was sailing in circles. The crew had taken all the gold, put it onto another small vessel, sped off with most of the crew. I think the idea was to come back and pick up the rest of the skeleton crew, but that didn't happen because my mom realized that we were going in circles. So they alerted the young men on the boat, and they rushed to the bridge and cornered the captain and wouldn't let him leave, and demanded that he sail into Hong Kong. Now, had they realized that a few days later, we'd all be back in prison. But we ended up going to Hong Kong. So I'll tell you the rest of the story a little bit later. So I think in most stories that you think about, there's always a hero. And that hero can be your client, a patient testimony. It can be a consumer or someone with lived experience. But this person, in the kinds of videos that we produce, they're really the center of the story. It's like the Jane that we heard about, Vanessa talking about earlier, that kind of people. So you got to think to yourself, if you're producing a video, who is your hero? Right? And if you think about many stories, any movies, there's always some kind of hero. So this hero is a character you admire, and they're not necessarily successful in what they do. They may not be accomplishing what it is that they've set out to do. But the fact that they've tried with all their heart, usually that is more than enough. So typically we admire a character for trying more than for their successes. We appreciate them more for trying than what they've actually succeeded in doing. So I was going to show a video here. Sometimes the hero is not a person at all, but it's perhaps a concept or a service. And in the video I'm hoping to show, if the audio is working here, UBC approached us and said, hey, we have these group of researchers that we'd really like you to highlight in this upcoming conference a year ago called the AAAS conference. And it's a world premier scientific conference. So if you're presenting at this conference, you're a top shelf scientist. And they wanted to do a video highlighting the work that a couple of professors were doing about climate change visualizations. So you could actually see climate change happening before you in what they call the decision theater. And so the hero in this story really is that decision theater. The audio is
Audio driver crashed. There we go. So that's a good sign, because if it dies nicely, it should be born.
Does anybody watch House of Cards?
Yes,
Fantastic show.
loved it.
I just watched the first episode, and I can't believe I've waited so long. Really, really great show. I'd highly recommend it. It's a political intrigue.
Intelligent entertainment.
Very intelligent. Really intelligent.
Yeah,
So-
be on Netflix.
Netflix, that's right.
You can watch it all at once.
It looks like it's official. It's time for Chad to buy a Mac.
So in that situation, so let's see. I'll give you the link later on. You guys can check it out.
Do you want to do that? Can you talk for a minute? We'll swap the projector here.
Yeah, that's not worry about it.
Okay.
I'll give you guys the links. But clearly in that story, what's his name? What's his on-screen name?
Frank Underwood.
Frank Underwood. There you go.
Underhanded and frank at the same time.
Oh, that's very intelligent. So he clearly is the hero of the story, right? What happened to my son?
Oh, sorry. Phillip is definitely going to need the video stuff here, so we're going to take 1 minute.
Okay. Let me continue telling the story about what happened on that boat there. you know, I think in this story that you can view the boat or my mom as the hero, but my mom had the foresight to keep a journal on the trip. So as part of the 2 suitcases that they carried, you know, there were some clothes, and I don't think there were any memorabilia, but they packaged some food as well. And a lot of that food was canned pork and beans. And so she took the labels off the canned pork and beans and bound them together and created a journal. And I call them the Skylight journals. We're in the process of translating them right now, but it's really fantastic. And she kept all her notes on this, on letters home to family, saying that, you know, we're going to be home soon, you know, that kind of stuff. But in reality, there was no food on that boat. I think my mom said one time, you know, for 2 weeks she had nothing to eat because she gave all the food to my sister and myself. And at points there was no drink, no food, so she took sugar cubes and just mixed them in water and fed it to us. That was our sustenance, right? But the boat that you saw there, it was sinking. So the story behind that is that when we got to Hong Kong, the government didn't want us. So they said, listen, we've got no space for you. You just need to anchor off this island. It's called Lama Island. And we had been on that boat already for, I think it was 4 months. So you get to a place thinking that finally you're going to get on land, get some food, get some clothes, but then you're told to anchor off that island. And so we continue to stay on there. And I think we're on there for another 2 months total. Conditions were really, really difficult. Some young men tried to jump off the boat, swim to the island, swim, you know, somehow get to the mainland. A lot of them died attempting it. And then others that did make it, the very few that did make it, were sent back to boats after they got caught. So one night, a storm was brewing off the coast. And some of the organizers, the leaders of the boat got together and said, we need to do something. Our situation is so desperate. There's no food, there's no water, you know, we have to do something. So one suggestion came up and said, hey, why don't we cut the anchor? And that way, the storm can push us to shore, and then we'll get off. And so that's what they did. They cut the anchor, and that night the storm came, and in the morning, the waves pushed and slammed the boat closer and closer to shore until, bam, it hit the rock. And it continued to hit the rock as the waves came in, and it ruptured and began to sink. And so at that point, you know, it was very frightening. And my mom, not my mom actually, they were evacuating the women and children off first. So after a while, the Coast Guard came and said, okay, we're going to ferry the women and children off here, and the men, you guys got to stay on board here until we figure out how to get you off. And so you can imagine how rocky it was during that storm. And beside the boat, there's a wooden platform. And the women were climbing down. You see how big that boat was? It's enormous, right? They're climbing down to the platform where the Coast Guard was there to evacuate everybody. Now, my dad had to stay on board. So my mom had me, a 4-year-old boy, and a 2-year-old child. How does a woman get down the ladder with 2 children, right? So there's so much chaos going on, people yelling, you know, people pushing, trying to get off the boat, and my mom was at the rope. You know, there's no way she could get down there with 2 of them. She's too weak, you know, and the waves are too rough. And someone below yells up, throw her down! Throw her down! My mom, they were talking about my sister. They wanted my mom to throw my sister overboard so they could catch her. Throw her down! I can only imagine what must have happened if she closed her eyes and let go. You know, thank God, someone caught her. You know, and she came down, and we got on the boat, and we left. And went to Hong Kong, and that's where we stayed in refugee camp. So the 2 things I was going to talk about is, you know, your hero certainly has strengths. You know, they've got some value to them, obviously. And you want to highlight that strength. But at the same time, when you're choosing your hero, that hero has to have obvious weaknesses as well. We've all got weaknesses. We don't have to think very hard for it to come up, because we're all human. We failed in some way. We've messed up in some way. We've been rejected, perhaps. We've been abandoned, maybe. And so for all of us, when we're storytelling, we can all relate to those things. And oftentimes we'll endear ourselves to a character who has great weakness. Because something inside us thinks, that person can be redeemed. And just as we think to ourselves that possibly we can be redeemed as well. Perhaps Jane has worked so tirelessly, to get her out of her situation, to a place where she can start to take care of herself, and then possibly to look at ways that she can give back to her community. And we deal with stories about people that have been through the gutter. I remember interviewing one woman for a documentary about violence against Aboriginal women from their partners. And she was telling her story, and I told you before how difficult it is for people to tell their stories again, especially if it's when involving violence or great trauma. But she was, we had talked about the process, and so she was okay about opening up. Like, really try to do that with most people. This is what we're going to talk about. Are you comfortable with it? Where can I go in the questions? Where can I not go? And I really want to respect that with the people that we're telling stories about. Otherwise, it can be a very damaging experience. And so she was telling her story about spousal abuse, and she said, today I have 22 mended bones in my body because of what her partner did to her. He beat her so many times and so often that she had 22 broken bones. It's insane. I can't comprehend that. It's just so much. One time I did a documentary in Rwanda, and we talked to this one mother. Actually, we were having this team meeting with some of the community nurses. It was a maternal health program. So they wanted to get the mothers healthy so that they could bear healthy children, or at least children with higher birth weight so that they have a better chance of surviving. And we were having this team meeting with the community organizers, and one of the women from the program came in as we were discussing it. She just wanted to say hello. And we sat her down, and she was there with her child, her young child, and they asked her how she was doing. Oh, by the way, she had HIV. And her child was born HIV negative. And so they said, how's the feeding going on? She says, oh, I'm breastfeeding my child. I said, how can she buy formula, right? This area is so poor and racked with post-violence issues. And so the nurses then began to tell her, oh, did you know that there's a possibility of HIV transmission when you breastfeed your child? Her face just dropped. She had no idea that could happen. There's no education. Right? And so in that situation, what do? You can't tell her to go to London Drugs. You can't tell her to go to the grocery store to get formula. So they said to her, just, you're doing a great job. Keep on doing what you're doing. Feed your child, take care of it. It's okay. What can you do? And so, some people are in tough situations. So weaknesses, we've all got them. And so you certainly want your hero to have a weaknesses. We all do. I think what's also important is that for that hero to have a challenge of some kind, and to be able to go through that challenge mainly on their own power, of their own will. But of course, perhaps with help from the organization. I think a lot of donors would love to give, but they've got to feel like that person has helped themselves first before they receive other help, or at least they're doing it simultaneously. So they've got to go through some kind of challenge. Let's stop right there. That's a good sign. And you've got to ask yourself, why would somebody else care about the situation? So You guys seen Wall-E? Fantastic, fantastic movie. Without words, you can kind of, you know, understand the situation that Wall-E's in. So I would say, how are we doing on time here?
Yeah,
About
pretty
there?
quick. Yeah.
Okay. So I
But
would
given that we killed 2 computers as you're going, I'm only giving you an extra couple of minutes.
That's okay. So I also think that, you know, with weakness, sometimes when we see people weaker than us, it gives us an opportunity to think, hey, perhaps I can help that person. You know, it creates an opportunity to give and to act. You know, I think bottom line, because we're all humans, typically we all want the same things. I don't think anybody who would say they wouldn't want security. Job security, emotional security, we all want that. We all want happiness. You know, that happiness could be money, could be people, could be a relationship, it could be a position at work, it could be the ability to travel. We all want happiness. You know, we all want a future for ourselves and for our children. And I think all of these things here are really universal truths. If you can tap into those things with your story and be able to tell it to your donor base or your audience, you'll click with them because they all experience the same thing. So in closing, if you're going to produce a film, you have to ask yourself a few questions. I think the first one is, who's going to be the hero of your story? What are their strengths and weaknesses? What challenges have they faced? And why should we care about them? And I think if you're able to hit those questions and come up with some great answers, then you'll be able to produce or have a backbone of a video that will make people care and then will make people act. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just extra hand for Andrew in the middle of digital storytelling event for us to kill not 1 but 2 computers and keep going through Avatar. Well done, well done. Making your life really easy because we just hammered every kink you could possibly have, and now it's, you know, freshly booted Windows machine. It should be smooth.
How's everybody doing? Yeah? You know what I mean?
So maybe we'll just try and check around a little over. So we'll go 15, and then a couple questions from the crowd, and then we can linger, chat, or go and have more conversational stories over beer afterwards for those that are so inclined. Do you want your slide deck up, bud?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Is this you? No. No. Swing and a miss.
Go like this. Go like that. Okay. Now go like this. See what that looks like? See your thumb is in your hand there? Okay. Now swap them. I'm having trouble with it too, so just get your brain going a little bit. Okay. My name is Phillip Djwa, and I run Agentic. We're a communications and digital media shop in Vancouver. We work exclusively with nonprofits, and we look to kind of create some social change. Who out here is from a nonprofit? Okay. Who here is from, oh, actually, who here works for themselves? Awesome. And what about from business? Okay. Institutions? Okay. All right, so overwhelmingly nonprofit, so that's good. And people that are working for themselves, so that's good. Because some of the things I'm going to talk about, I think, are kind of focused around how nonprofits think. So this may be some stuff that you've heard of and some stuff that's new. And I think some of the things that we've been developing or trying to work on is slightly different than what you've been hearing tonight in terms of how we think about it, which is first that personal stories aren't the complete part of storytelling. There's a lot more to it. And one of the things we've been trying to figure out is really what that is. And for us, a theory of change that we've been working on is that digital storytelling is kind of like what my daughter said, just tell me a story, but make it about me, right? And there's an aspect to that that really is about that engagement, that gap, that space that somebody can fill. And we feel that digital, can create an effective narrative, just think about it as creating an effective narrative, because that's what we feel digital media can do. And what do we mean by digital media is just basically the idea that we can use in an online manner the different tools and services that we have at our disposal to create an experience for somebody to have. You're seeing on the right-hand side what we like to think of as our ladder of engagement. If you haven't heard about ladder of engagement, there's a lot of stuff online that's really useful about understanding how you might take somebody and kind of move them through. If you're from business, you turn it upside down and it's your sales funnel. It's kind of the same deal. We just turn it, But it's basically from that first visit to your site, how can you get people to do something? And oftentimes that's sort of what we're trying to get, is to get people to actually move into action. And that's really around engagement for us. So for us, we've been thinking a lot about engagement. Who here has been also thinking about engagement? Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's like kind of au courant right now, just like digital storytelling, but it's actually because it's getting harder and harder, right? Like email opens, are going down. It's getting harder. You have 2 seconds. We used to say, oh, you've got, 30 seconds before people will leave your site. And it was like, oh, you've got 10 seconds before people will leave your site. Now what is it, do you think, right? 2, 3 seconds before people get kind of turned off? So again, we're looking to convert those visitors into action. So one of the things that we tried to come up with is a sort of framework way of thinking about how we talk about engagement. So one of the things that we kind of look at is, first off, what's the core online piece that typically is the organization's main website? That's their brain online, right? And we have another kind of theoretical framework called their digital ecology, but suffice it to say that right now that core online is your main organizational website. Then we talk about adjacent, and really that looks like campaigns, because one of the things that's happening is that people are coming to us not like with one website. Now here's our website, we'd like to redo it. They'll have 10, they'll have 20, and I'm sure that's probably not news. And then you add in Facebook and Twitter, and it's this bewildering, overwhelming amount of information that needs to be managed. That's your digital ecology. But for us, this adjacent is a good way to think about how we tuck in those campaign sites, those petition sites, all of those kinds of microsites that focus on that. And then lastly, what I want to talk a little bit about tonight is what we call transformation. And that's basically, how can you take something that's very different and try and engage your constituency in a way that's unusual, right? That's different. And again, it's that way of filling in that gap, telling a story that involves them. That kind of makes sense? So one of the things is that those transformation projects that we've done have a couple of attributes, and I just thought I would tell you what they are. So one is that they've got to engage the audience. And I talk about attributes because they're not the same, and I'll give you some examples so you can see what I'm talking about. The second is that they do need to have tangible results. What's the most tangible result for most nonprofits? Cash. That's true. But there's another metric that people love, love, love.
Views or opens?
List building. Emails. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. But it's like that is pretty much the #1 thing that people want. Give us some email. So tangible results, and definitely cash is one of them too, but that's oftentimes coming out of that email and then relationship that you also start. And that's, I think, another key part. And Vanessa, you mentioned that too. It's like there's an arc to these kinds of things. Like when we think about storytelling now, we're really looking at a whole arsenal of different tools. Arsenal's not the right word. I always forget that. Sometimes when I'm talking to my clients, I'm the choir, and it's like, no, can't do that. Can't do that. But the point is that you've got a way to start a relationship that they can grow, and that you have ways to, understand a larger, arc. And then again, lastly, shareable. These things need to be shared. Social media, because the first thing that somebody do when they're excited, like, wow, I gotta tell somebody else about this, right? And that's the energy that you want to try and have, right? So I'll just give you a couple of examples of some of the things that we've done in this vein. One was this was with Sarah Farmer, the Mountain Equipment Co-op, doing a video. We had people could draw on a video slide of a song, I'm a Mountain, and every time that somebody did that, they donate $1. We then created the whole video. I'd love to show that if we have time, but then she presented it at her concert, right? So it was kind of a nice way so that people could actually feel like they're contributing to the aspect. And about 1,800 video frames were done. This was another project called Canada Code, where there was 10,000 Canadians that participated in this and uploading slides and text. And then during the Olympic Games, this was part of the Cultural Olympiad, Canadians could remix those slides. Anyone here participated in that at all? But that was really another aspect of how we could we could put forward our vision of Canada, and then the rest of the world could come and kind of understand what that was. This was another one, a Facebook application designed to drive engagement. It basically allowed you to kind of save your Facebook friends from extinction. Global Zero is an international NGO that's looking to have 0 nuclear weapons in the world. One of the things, and I think this is picking up on what Andrew was saying, every one of these projects we create what's called a signature video, which is just something that starts the process to kind of try and introduce the concept, give some idea, and kind of get the person into it in a way, right, and get some excitement around what's going on. And then lastly, another mountain equipment co-op one. This was Big Well, Big Water, and we had some, I think, 3,000 or 4,000 photos uploaded. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit too about what makes a compelling story. And last year I went to NTC. Does anybody know the nonprofit technology and n10.org? n10.org, if you are looking for a resource, this is a really great one. I don't know if this is going to be all that visual, but I'm going to try and kind of blast through this. So there's a couple of things about what can make a compelling story for you. Can you guys hear me at the back? Is this okay volume? Okay. So one of the things about finding better stories is that, like I was saying earlier, you really got to try to find and be very hard on the stories that you're getting in, because some of them just are not that interesting. And that's also about teaching staff how to become better storytellers. And that really is an art and a technique and something that can be fostered. And then the last one, which I thought was really interesting, and this is from Sue Citro, who is a friend of mine at the Nature Conservancy, who talked about letting go of your stories. And this I thought was really interesting because, when we think about social media, we think of like, oh yeah, we're going to share all this stuff, but other people are sharing and talking too. And so there's a dialogue and discussion that's going on and a picture of your organization that's happening completely outside your control. That's another idea about letting go of your story. And also just the idea that sometimes you think you have idea about how your organization should be talking about things, but other people have really interesting ideas about what your story is actually to them. Also, just understanding that your organization has a voice, and trying to understand what that voice is and being really articulate about it and trying to make sure that people can understand it as an organization. I mean, style guide, is one way to kind of approach it. Brand voice would be if you're coming from the advertising world, but it makes the same kind of impact. And that's very hard when you get what I was calling about your larger digital ecology, because your voice on Facebook is a little different than the voice might be on your blog, which might be different than your Twitter, so it's like something to think about. And then also, I don't know, again, it might be hard to see a little bit, but how to improve stories, I think there's a number of things that you can do to kind of help. One is that, don't just think about using text. I mean, email aside, but there's certainly, visuals, photographs. I think we've all heard that information about Facebook photos being the most virally spread, and also if you have words on it, they're read like 80% more than if you have words beside. Like these are like really smart, simple things to do. So it turns out that internet meme thing, is my daughter always sends me the what is it, Asian dad, like not uptight, but anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Any Asians in the room would probably totally relate to that. Anyway, my daughter always thinks I'm a little hard on her, but that meme, the whole meme or the angry troll with the lettering, that works, right? That is a very effective way to do it. Also, the we were talking about that earlier. What is the we? Like, it's not we, the organization. You know, the we is both the donor, and I'm really talking a lot about donors, by the way. But it's the donor and the organization together as we, right? That's a really important thought. And a lot of organizations, I feel, don't really look at that. And then also really understanding what that donor identity is. And one of the things being that people give because it is an affiliative, is that a word, affiliative? You know, it's an affiliation with a tribe that they feel that they can belong to, right? So if I give to an organization, that's part of me now, right? And so that understanding is really important. And lastly, obviously the consequence, you know, the idea of like what happens if you don't kind of participate. Does anyone know Robert Cialdini and the kind of influencer? He had this kind of seminal book. I was in advertising before, and that had a lot of resonance for ad people. It's very hard to see here. The first one is reciprocity. These are the principles that he believes are fundamental in trying to influence somebody to do something, right? So you have to use this power for good, right? But reciprocity, so you know the whole idea that somebody gives you a flower, you're more likely to listen to them on the street corner, give your pitch because you feel indebted in a strange way, right? We've all understood that. Consistency is just around the idea that once you've committed to something, your internal idea of that you want to follow through and be consistent kicks in. So that your idea that you want to, for example, if somebody has told you about an idea in the beginning, and now they come back to you at the end, you're more likely to pay attention to it. I don't know if I'm making this really all that easy to understand. Social proof is just how much you know, people are talking about it. We used to call it the climate of credibility. You know, the buzz, right? That other people are doing it too. It's the equivalent. You walk into an empty restaurant, you're kind of like, what? Oops, you know, maybe this is the wrong place, right? Authority, you know, there is that play to authority. You know, you don't have doctors and dentists, you know, shilling for, you know, Colgate and Crest for no reason, right? We have that association, okay, you know, they must know what they're talking about. They're in a position of authority. And lastly, scarcity, which everyone, oh, there you go, now it's clear, which everyone, you know, has an understanding of, no doubt. So the Nature Conservancy did 3 things that really were very powerful for them, and obviously this is really simple information. You know, one is they just use simple language. We call it plain language. You know, it's just, you know, what would we say? Probably, you know, grade 6. You know, I don't know. Does anyone have a comment about that? I use grade 10, but you know, other people have said plain language, you know, can be targeted even lower. But you know, fair enough, right? I mean, you want people to understand what it is that you're trying to say. Second thing, they used photos, and lastly, they used humor. Definitely, comedy sells, and you know, that's a way that you can engage people. Hard to do when you're talking about serious subjects, but you know, the Nature Conservancy, you know, has a wide range of things. And then I thought this was really great too, is that, you know, there's a gut check here that you can do whenever you're kind of creating these stories that might be something that gives you a barometer of like, does this really work? So number one, like I was saying about those attributes of being shareable, just ask yourself, would you do it? You know, would I share this? You know, second thing is like trying to get out of that trap of like, I'm so great. And that's not really the way that we think about it. It's just that we have this idea that by explaining, you know, the amazing work that we're doing and how awesome it is, that people will see that. But again, that whole gap, you know, of trying to get people to be engaged means that you need to tell about them. And then lastly, and I think this is really important, is their unresolved tension, right? So that space for action has to be something that they can do. So what we're trying to do is create a picture of a compelling story that not only is a story, but it's a compelling story that actually gets someone to act, right? And so that's why I'm saying at the beginning there that personal stories can be very dangerous, because you have to respect and understand what they are. You have to be careful of the ethical or moral issues around them. But at the end of the day, they might not be that compelling story that moves someone to act. That makes sense? Okay. Okay, that's it. So, I mean, really, in terms of, you know, all of the different kinds of aspects around a compelling story and how we use it, I hope, you know, in that kind of like blast of information, you've gotten something out of that. I guess we're going to be around having some chats, and what do you want all of us to come up here and?
Yeah, well, maybe wrap things up really quick here, as I think we're at limit. I'm not sure if security's going to come and drag us out individually along the way, which okay, but yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
So maybe we'll get all four of you guys up here. We'll take a couple quick questions for people, and then we can kind of scatter about. The nice thing is, unlike most Next Tuesday events, you guys don't have to fold chairs for us and put them away as you guys go. Something that you nonprofit folks should probably know about is this is actually the first of about 10 events going on around the world, focused specifically on digital storytelling. Eli, there's some sort of challenge going on about digital storytelling?
Oh yeah. There's all kinds of fancy things, prizes. If you make yourself like a 5-photo slideshow or a 1-minute video, there's all kinds of fancy things, which I'll tell you about afterwards.
Great, great. And I guess if you want to practice on this stuff, there's that DS-106 course that Daily Create kind of level up before you submit for the
frequently.
So we've talked lots. I've talked a bit. Do you guys have any questions for the panel before we break? Any burning desire? We'll make sure to post on these videos these guys brought online. We kind of run out of time and we'll look up computers along the way. Going once? Yes, there we go.
For Phillip or really anyone on the panel, just maybe some comments about taking your core media platform, so if it's the video, and then how do you execute that across other platforms? So how do you move your story across other mediums? If you have a great example.
Sure. I mean, we did a documentary series on castles. 6 castles that changed history. It's called Battle Castle on History and Discovery. And the whole idea that you're talking about is really transmedia, which is this idea that storytelling can take place in different media and really use those different media to reflect the different points of that story. So, for example, you might have a feature film being the classic thing in Star Wars. And then other books that expand that universe, and you've got action figures, et cetera, nonprofits can use the same aspect to look at what is the difference about, for example, Global Zero. They had a feature film done about a number of issues that were there. They used their website to keep up with current events. They used the different kinds of transformation engagement to try and get people to join their list. So that's a way that you can kind of expand out and just think about the different media and what their strengths are and use them.
Anyone else comments about diversifying your story?
Well, I think some stories are just better suited to certain media too. I'm sure you've noticed that as well. I think it's obviously a great idea to be able to create like an all-encompassing campaign where you can tell stories across different media, because obviously not everybody in your community is going to watch your videos. Maybe they only read content on your website. So if you can connect them through that with a different medium, then you can consistently tell the same story and the same message ultimately.
Linda, you had a question?
Yes, I did. One of you said you need a different voice for the different platforms. You have a different voice for Twitter or Facebook. Who said that? So what are your so that was interesting. So I'm just wondering what the others of you, what are your thoughts then? Do you really need a different voice for each of those things? Or can you have the same voice? Is it so time consuming to create a different voice for everything?
It does take time, and it was a bit of a hurdle. I found just that it was beneficial for me to create a whole other identity, to be honest. For DS106, where I have a separate account, and I actually have it's a secret account. I won't even mention my handle. But it allowed me to actually sort of unlock part of my personality or express myself. Basically, I got it so I could swear more on Twitter. I don't want to swear too much on my professional account, but I'll definitely let them go on my private DS106 account. It's not much help with it.
I think I would just point out, like, what I was really getting at was that for an institution, like, the way that you speak on Facebook is sometimes less formal. You know, might be more, you know, call and response. You're replying to people. It's a real person. You know, on Twitter, you know, like, there's a great tool, Hootsuite. You know, that's another really amazing tool where
Next Tuesday sponsored Hootsuite for the record.
It's Vancouver company.
Absolutely. So I mean, that allows, for example, when we've done campaigns, you know, the Twitter account can be, you know, there's a way that you, with Hootsuite, you can respond in different ways. You know, I think that on a blog, if it's the, you know, executive director's blog, you know, versus somebody else, they have a different voice, and I think it's just important to realize what it is.
Okay, thanks.
I can't see your name tag, so lady in pink.
If you have a limited amount of resources and you're trying to focus your energy, and maybe your goal is list building, or maybe it's engagement, or maybe it's money raising, are there different tools that being proven for each of those things to be more successful than others?
Which tool would be the most effective?
Which tool for list building, which tool for engaging with your stakeholders, which tool for raising money? You say email for this, and, you know, Twitter for that.
Well, I'm willing to guess the panelists will say, well, I believe in email, and that's why I talked about email. But any comments? I mean, sometimes, you know, it's a lot easier to nail something together if you don't use a screwdriver. Sometimes better tools for better jobs.
I would say this, you've got to use cross-platforms. You've got to use all that's available here to be able to really effectively communicate your message. I think making a video is nice, but it's like buying a car. Okay, you've got your car, but where's the gas and where's the GPS? You gotta be able to get that car to where you want it to go. So I've really been advising my clients, so once you've got your video, what are you going to do with it? It used to be that, you know, you use it for a one-time gala event, done. It's shelved. But you've got to be able to use that in email campaigns. You've got to be able to create effective web strategies with that, and to be able to distribute it as widely as possible. You know, so I would say use all that's available. You've really got to knock on all cylinders.
So will people get tired of having one message hammered at them from different vehicles?
If I was going to choose one thing, and this is going to sound terrible, it would be email.
Yeah, I would too.
Because
So
I mean, it's
cost-effective.
so inexpensive, it's so effective,
Yeah.
and for cause-based organizations or mission-based organizations, it's, you know, really a very powerful way to raise money.
Yeah, I would second that, because you can do all of your email communication and like communications type work through that, as well as fundraising. And in terms of being able to improve the ROI, campaign over campaign, it's so easy to track results and do testing that you just can't do with direct mail or social media.
Final question here?
I just have just a reaction to that, which is, just because sometimes we get bored of the things we are saying, we feel like we're saying it over and over and over again, our supporters are probably not as obsessively paying attention to our work as we would like them to. So they often say in marketing, it's at the point when you're bored of the message that it's just starting to be heard by your supporters.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm just curious, because chin mail is sort of like kind of a big thing now, so is there an opinion from the panelists on how the chin mail is?
So the question for the people in the back is MailChimp, yay or nay? What do you think?
Oh, in terms of email service providers?
In terms of marketing through
Well, I mean, there's lots of different email service providers. MailChimp is a great one because it does allow you to start list building and sending emails for free for quite a long time if your list is under 2,000 people. And I think you get like 12,000 cents per month or something like that, which is pretty generous. It's free. It gives you all the same statistics you would get if you had a paid account. I feel like it's pretty easy.
I guess what you could say, that using the services and really the tactic, a lot more power if you just send email yourself, even if you're sending a platform or something like that. You still use the service way from tracking opens, delivery.
So for those in the back, what Jerry's just saying, if you use that as opposed to just regular sending email, you can actually track things like, who opened it, who actually clicked the link, as opposed to regular email where you kind of send in one. All right, final question, and we got something for someone brave enough to have the final question before we put a big bow on this and call it our night. Prizes. Prizes. There we go. Sorry, Farrah beat you there.
So, sorry. So I come from an organization, I come from the BCSPCA, and we have a plethora of stories. We have so many stories, but our problem is that we are so busy, and everyone is so, especially in our shelters, dealing with life and death. Teasing out those stories is very difficult, and so we've tried to do workshops with our branches to try and get the sense of story. I guess, do you have any advice on what we can do to tease out these amazing stories that we know are there, but we're sitting in our offices and and not down at the ground level, beyond throwing money at a full-time person to have a GoPro and be out there that I know some of my colleagues around the world do.
One way that Nature Conservancy did it was actually asked the people that work with them, like their donor base, every time they had a chance to do a donation or anything like that, they said, if you have a story, let us know. David Suzuki Foundation did an Ocean Stories project where they just asked people to submit stories and videos, and that was pretty successful. Jody's over there. I think that one thing you can do is ask people, and then you still have to take the responsibility of looking through them and reading them, but that might have some way. I mean, I think that the idea of just having it so easy for somebody to submit a story to you that they kind of trip over it everywhere in your newsletter, in your an email, if you ever have a story, just let us know. It might be a good way.
I think if you're talking about internal staff too, I mean, I get what you're saying, creating that culture of storytelling can be incredibly difficult because everybody is so immersed in the program side of the work. I worked with a social service organization for quite a long time that focused on taking 5 minutes at the beginning of staff meetings for everybody to share something from their week that nobody else would probably have heard, but it was an interaction with a client or something they were working on, a case, whatever it might have been, just to kind of reconnect all the staff with the work that was actually happening. And then once a month, their outreach team would send out a stories newsletter where they would sit down and talk about projects that they were working on and submit it to the fundraising staff.
And one last thing would be, I think New Organizing Institute, they have some tutorials online, and I think some of them are about digital storytelling. And then actually there's another resource that just I found out about today. It's by Resource Media. If you go to Resource Media, they're also a nonprofit PR firm, and so they have a lot of resources on finding it. And then also n10.org.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
TechSoup also in supporting all this nonprofit digital storytelling stuff. They have a series of webinars and Twitter chats coming over the next month that are all free to participate in. I think you put TechSoup digital storytelling in, you'll probably have many links to click on the more hours than you have in the day.
Yeah, great.
So we've gone really late here, guys. Thanks for sticking around. A big hand for our panel. I think we all took about an hour already. Philip, I think the book gets to go to Farrah for the final question.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah, this is a book. This is by Deanna Zantz. It's called Share This. She's a fabulous, social media maven. She was very instrumental in the Planned Parenthood. She did that Tumblr site about Planned Parenthood Saved My Life. She's a really great woman. We worked with her on this book. Glad to pass it along.
Great, thank you.
If you guys want to chit-chat with people, feel free. My computer died terribly for Andrew and his video, but I think next month we are doing our session about video for nonprofits. So maybe we'll try to work Andrew in there so that post session. So, all right, thanks guys. Cheers.